Hello and welcome to the third of the three presentation sets that we have as part of the briefing for the Strength in Places Fund. This is the third set of slides, the third session that we've taken out across 10 events across the nations and the regions of the United Kingdom. And if you missed the opportunity to come and talk to us then, this is an opportunity to hear the same briefing that we presented at those events. So, again, to introduce myself, I'm Dean Cook and I am one of the leads for the Strength in Places Fund. So what we're going to do in this final session is not to go through in detail. For those of you who've had a look at these sort of webinar briefings before, we're not going to go sort of page by page through the application process. But instead, what I'm going to try and do is just highlight a few key things we would like you to think about and tell you where you can go for the detailed information. So the first point I'm going to make is, and you'll have the web addresses at the end, is that everything that I'm going to talk about now is on the internet, and would really urge you to go and have a look at all those documents that are there. And there is also a detailed FAQ, live document that we have been building, and given that this is replicating what we've been doing at the briefing events, you won't have the chance to engage us in discussion around the application process and anything you're unclear about, but we do have an inbox for inquiries, but we'll come on to that in a bit. So the first thing that I would like to do is just to recap on the second slide set that Rachel presented, and just to sort of recap on the key points to be thinking about. Very often people will say to us, you know, what's the golden thread that has to be in my proposal? What's the key thing you're looking for? And we can't repeat this enough. The most important thing about what we're trying to drive through this initiative is to fund the best proposals, the strongest bids, wherever they are across the UK, that demonstrate the greatest proportionate economic benefit to the locality, measured by business growth or regional productivity or combination of those. It's playing to what you will have read in the industrial strategy about building that economy for all, and it's about building on strength across the UK wherever it may be, and particularly to sort of move that needle and to bring those parts of the UK up to the national average or better in terms of their regional economic performance. Now, the actual funding package of intervention, so that's a very focused objective that I've just talked through, and that's what this whole program hinges upon. But of course, what you can actually do is very flexible. So we're allowing consortia to tell us what package of interventions they would like to bring through that consortia, to that cluster, to that locality, and that's articulated at this first expression of interest stage. And then, as you'd have heard from Rachel on the second slide set, that will then be refined, supported by the C-Core money that we're making available through the second stage for those successful consortia who got through the expression of interest in terms of the full bid development. And of course, in terms of that funding package of interventions, we're encouraging consortia to draw upon any of the R&D mechanisms that are currently delivered through UKRI's councils, whether that's knowledge exchange activities, whether that's some of the underpinning translational research, collaborative R&D, whatever that might be. You tell us what you are planning to do. So the first, the two slides I'll go through next, this is something we want to really flag because of how we're treating state aid slightly differently at expression of interest to full stage. So as you'll be aware from having listened to the second slide set, this initiative is to support the research base working with businesses. So it's about that business research collaboration. And therefore, we have to make sure that the funding that goes out has to be compliant with state aid rules. So for this first C-Core funding stage, we've framed the state aid position to enable all applicants to be eligible to claim up to the maximum of the £50,000 C-Core for those successful EOIs that are taken forward to full stage. Now, as you will have heard, a proposal could be either led by a research organisation or by a business. And for those who are familiar with state aid, there could have been a possibility that the way we would have treated businesses would have meant that a business-led proposal couldn't have drawn down the full CCORN amount. So that's the explanation for why we've framed it this way. So to summarise, and as I say, this is all on the internet, all on the UKRI web pages, that research organisation-led bid, obviously under state aid, given the nature of their involvement, would be 100% eligible for project costs if leading, and whether that's a university or an RTO or any non-profit distributing research organisation, go to the web pages to have a look at eligibility. Although I will touch on that in a moment. And of course, businesses leading a bid, we will allow them to claim up to de minimis if they haven't already reached that, allowing them to take the full £50,000 support, or if that limit has already been reached, could apply as a feasibility study for that 50k, but then bringing in the top-up match to bring that compliant with state aid. Now, if you're not a state aid expert, don't worry. For those that get through the expression of interest stage, we will have colleagues at UKRI that can help you with that. And then at full stage, well, actually, we flip this back on you that are proposing your projects. Again, the same sort of ground rules apply. That research organisation can support up to 100% of eligible project costs, and of course, businesses have to comply with the relevant match funding requirements as part of state aid. But we ask you, as the proposers, to tell us how your package of interventions and how that is drawn down by the businesses or research organisations is compliant with state aid rules. Now I want to talk a little bit about co-investment. So in my last slide I talked about match against state aid, but for those of you perhaps from the research community that are used to sort of some of the other industrial engagement mechanisms that UKRI runs, where there's a requirement for a sort of a co-investment, sometimes called match, but a co-investment. That's not a prerequisite of this call, but we do strongly encourage it. And the reason we strongly encourage it is that we would like serious consortia to this to show that there is some local commitment to the package of interventions that are being proposed. So that's enough on state aid. I want to talk a little bit about research organisations. So in terms of eligibility for those research organisations taking part, this is a UKRI funding call. So that means that rather than narrowing the eligibility down through the lens that just a single council might apply business as usual, this is making sure that all organisations that will be supported by UKRI, whether those are organisations that apply to any of the 7 research councils or to Research England or to Innovate UK, is to make sure that the broadest community is supported. And in terms of that, we've gone to the European definition for state aid on what constitutes a research organisation. So as you can see from the slide here, we'll be supporting higher educational institutions, we'll be supporting non-profit research and technology organisations, including the Catapults, the Catapult Network, and public sector research establishments, and of course the Research Council Institutes. And if you think of what we're trying to drive, this is really important, because we're trying to drive strong clusters. And a cluster within an area is an ecosystem, and those local ecosystems will contain all of those research players. So it's really important that it's joined up and that we support that in a joined up manner. Of course, for those RTOs perhaps that might be looking, that are contract research organisations that are looking to do things commercially, then on a case-by-case basis, depending on the sort of activity that they're planning, we may treat you as businesses for state aid. But as I said earlier on, for those that get through the expression of interest stage, we can help you with that. So how can I find out more? Well, you'd have seen that the call was published on the 21st of May, and all the documentation is on the UKRI website. That then gives you a link to the Innovation Funding Service where you can load up your online application. The deadline for expression of interest is the 25th of July. And we have a mailbox for inquiries, the Strength in Places Fund at re.ukri.org. And of course, for those that are familiar with the Innovation Funding Service, you can also post your inquiries if you're having trouble with the system to support at innovateuk.ukri.org as normal. But the last thing that we would like to leave you with, and as we said at the briefing events, is this is the start of a conversation. So we've gone out, we've engaged with communities across the UK. Hopefully you've been sufficiently interested and you weren't able to make one of those events and you've come to these slides. If you'd like to engage further with us, we're more than happy to come out and visit meetings where perhaps there is a group, a sort of consortia starting to come together, and where we might be able to reach a broader audience by someone from the team coming and talking to you about the call. Of course, as always, it's diary permitting, but if you would like to talk to us further, please do let us have your inquiry or your ask through the Strength in Places Fund inbox, and diaries permitting, we would be more than happy to carry on that conversation. For those familiar with some of the staff that we have out in the field in outreach, from my team at Innovate UK, there are 10 regional managers across the UK that you can talk to and are well briefed on this initiative. And likewise, with Research England, they have their institution engagement managers that you can also speak to. And of course, you can talk to the research councils through the normal established channels. So that's that from us, and we look forward to interest in this call. Thank you.